Welcome to Weekend Ag Matters from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. Join us for an in-depth look at Iowa agriculture. Here's your host, Dustin Hoffman.
Welcome into this week's edition of Weekend Ag Matters. I'm Dustin Hoffman. Let's run down some of the news headlines we followed this week. The Iowa Cattlemen's Association named their Producer of the Year and Hall of Fame Award winners at the 2025 annual convention last month. And Dennis Clarahan, a fifth generation of Clarahans to raise cattle in Keokuk County, was named the Producer of the Year. His farm is located in Harper, Iowa, and is run by Dennis and his wife Cheryl, along with their two sons, Ryan and Neil. Their operation consists of both cattle and crops. Clarahan Farms earned its Century Farm title in 2023. And the Hall of Fame inductee for this year was Beth Doran. She was with ISU Extension and Outreach. She recently retired after 27 years of serving producers. Said she's currently working on getting moved back to Central Iowa to be closer to her husband and family farm. Elsewhere in ag news, as the 2026 legislative session approaches, Iowa Ag Secretary Mike Naig is introducing a new concept aimed at bringing focus to ag policy in the state. The proposal, known as the Iowa Farm Act, is designed to bundle a wide range of agricultural-related priorities into one package. Naig says the idea behind the Farm Act is similar to a state-level farm bill, pulling together many different sectors of agriculture under one legislative vehicle.
We're talking about the concept of an Iowa Farm Act, which is you can very much think of it as akin to a farm bill type concept. We've actually seen this used as a vehicle in other states successfully to move kind of a broad array of ag policy pieces together. And we thought it was time to maybe try that here in the state of Iowa. There's a lot of ag-related legislation that passes in a given year. But what this is attempting to do is to really pull together kind of what I actually like about it is it represents the kind of the diverse array of the sectors that are in Iowa ag. For instance, we've got a provision that will affect beekeepers and specialty crop producers. It'll support our livestock producers. It'll support our row crop producers and agribusinesses as well. So there's really something for nearly everybody in here. And of course, the concept is bring some focus to it, talk about an ag package. It's a vehicle for other ag-related measures to be attached to it and really do something that's positive for our ag community, certainly at a time when we need all the help we can get and the stability that we can get.
According to Naig, many of the provisions came directly from conversations with producers during farm visits across Iowa. He says those trips are focused on listening and learning what challenges farmers and rural businesses face on the ground.
The origin of the bill itself even is, and these two are good examples of this, these came directly from a visit that I made, separate visits that I made throughout the year. I visit all 99 counties, and we're not just putting miles on the car and pumping E15 into or unleaded 88 into the tank, right? We're out there listening and visiting and learning and trying to hear what are the challenges. So these are two examples of things. I was on a Christmas tree farm. I was at a beekeeper business, and these issues came up. We said, we can do something about this. And so you can kind of go through the whole bill, and there are going to be pieces that have a direct tie back to either a grower association, an industry association, or an Iowan that I visited with throughout the last year. And we said, we can put that into a broader Farm Act bill.
Naig says the Iowa Farm Act is meant to bring attention to agriculture at a time when farmers are facing economic uncertainty and rapid change. While additional ag-related legislation would move independently, he hopes this approach can be a recurring way to update policy as the industry evolves. Well, the Department of Health and Human Services and the USDA released dietary guidelines for Americans 2025 to 2030, marking what agencies call a significant reset of the federal nutrition policy. They said the new guidelines deliver a clear, common-sense message to the American people: eat real food. The guidelines emphasize simple, flexible guidance rooted in modern nutritional science, including prioritizing protein at every meal. They also recommended Americans consume full-fat dairy with no added sugars, eat vegetables and fruits throughout the day, focusing on whole forms, and incorporate healthy fats from whole foods like meats, seafoods, eggs, nuts, seeds, olives, and avocados. They also recommend focusing on whole grains, sharply reducing refined carbohydrates, and limiting highly processed foods. And of course, Monday we will see the January WASDE report plus our grain estimates for the production year of 2025. That report will have market analysts looking towards what an expectation could be for yield cuts to corn or soybeans. How much of a cut could still be determined, and if it happens at all. Well, we hear from Caden Sweeney of agmarket.net.
I think it definitely is. And really the scary part is, we always say no 2 years are the same, but this year feels a lot like last year did at this time. One thing I will say that maybe feels a bit different is I think last year the yield cut, especially on the corn side, felt like it really came out of left field. It was a bit of a surprise. I would argue now that the trade is anticipating a yield cut, almost expecting it.
And that's been a check of your Ag News headlines this week. Let's turn it over to Russ Parker with his faith-based for thought.
I had a phone conversation with a good friend recently. He's a grandpa like me and was explaining that his young granddaughter's learning how to talk and her mom and dad were putting her through her paces for grandpa, showing off all the new words that she was learning. Part of the lesson involved putting words together, and the phrase they were working on was from the movie Frozen, Let It Go. As the story was explained to me, she had all the animation, body language, and facial expressions down perfectly for the first two words. And then, with great pride and volume, she shouted out, "Go!" It goes to show that sometimes words are not necessary to make the point. I can think of another example of letting go that brings back a vivid memory of my father-in-law fishing in Canada for walleyes. A little background, he grew up during the Depression in South Dakota. His parents were farmers, and he learned lessons early, lessons of thrift, responsibility, and respect that stayed with him his entire life. Well, while we were fishing, he caught a huge walleye. The fish was out of the slot, too large to keep, and he knew the rules, but there was some serious fillets on that fish, and it didn't take a rocket scientist to know exactly what he was thinking. And he held on to that fish for what seemed like eternity, and then, with a combination of anguish and reluctant resolve, he released it back to the water. That was a monumental moment of letting go. Letting go can be tough, can't it? Earlier this week, I watched two families let their loved ones go, far earlier than anyone expected. And I think the tendency we all share is to hold on. So while we eventually learn how to let go of material things, and even certain relationships, how do we deal with letting go from a spiritual perspective? As humans, I think our tendency is wanted to be in control of everything all the time. And we know 100% of the time that doesn't work out very well. We use phrases like, "I've got this," "I don't need any help," "Everything's under control," "The crisis is contained," "We're in the driver's seat." Yet Scripture reminds us otherwise. Proverbs 3, verses 5 and 6 say, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. And in all your ways submit to him, and he will make your paths straight." Letting go from a faith perspective doesn't mean giving up. It means handing over control to the one who already has it. So maybe the next time we hear that familiar song from Frozen, we can smile and quietly confirm, yes indeed, let it go, because my God is in control. Food for thought, I hope. This is Russ Parker. Have a blessed day.
Thanks, Russ, and that's going to do it here for segment 1 of Weekend Ag Matters. Stay with us. We got lots more to come. Mark Magnuson will be next. Hi, this is Dustin Huffman, Content Director at the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, inviting you to the 2026 Iowa Pork Congress, January 21st and 22nd in Des Moines. This is the pork industry's largest winter gathering, bringing together thousands of pork producers and industry professionals from across the Midwest and beyond. Explore 200-plus exhibitors, gain insights from industry-leading speakers, and connect with the people shaping the future of pork production. Don't miss 2 days of education, innovation, and networking at the Iowa Event Center. Register today at iowaporkcongress.org. That's iowaporkcongress.org.
Welcome back to Weekend Ag Matters. Here is Mark Magnuson.
Mark Magnuson for the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, and I'm joined today by Brandon Walter with Pioneer. And Brandon, could you remind me, please, your job title and role with Pioneer?
Yeah, so I'm the U.S. marketing leader for Pioneer Corn, based out of Johnston, Iowa.
So when you think about this corn growing season in Iowa this year, man, it was a wild one. It was. A lot of it came back to disease pressure, also the timing of those rainfalls that we had early in the season, June and July, very wet. Get to August, large parts of the state saw things dry off considerably.
Yes. Yeah.
So what's your big takeaway from this growing season?
Yeah, well, I've told this to a few other people today. It's like, any more of the averages are the extremes of what we see. So as you said, lots of variability is what we saw this past year across the state of Iowa and really throughout the whole entire U.S. The good news is, I would say, is even despite maybe some of the challenges that farmers faced, our performance continues to be really, really strong. So if you look at our top 40 products that we sell across the U.S., we had about a 6.9 bushel advantage on over 23,000 comparisons. So the key thing I always like to say is for farmers is, the yield is important, but honestly, the comparisons is almost as important. And the reason I say that is you think about a year like 2025, lots of different conditions, maybe different conditions depending on your geography. We want to make sure that farmers have confidence in our products and the genetics that they're going to be planting in 26. And we're bringing lots of data in local geographies to help support that. So Pioneer reps are really well armed with information that they've learned from this past year to help us better position products for this upcoming year in 26.
So speaking of those genetics and the things that Pioneer Seed can do coming out of the bag, this year, obviously, we saw Southern Rust across the state of Iowa. Big time pressure that we're not used to.
Yes.
How do Pioneer products out of the bag stand up to Southern Rust?
Yeah, so I'd say overall in a really, really good spot, especially as we compare ourselves to our industry peers. We are in a really good spot to, I think, continue to control Southern Rust. But back to your point, I think the other thing I think is important for farmers is we're making decisions in 26 is Southern Rust is going to be the thing that they're all going to focus on, or really how often have we seen Southern Rust to the level we did in 2025? So it doesn't mean we won't see it in 26, but I think we need to be careful. We're still thinking about tar spot. We're still thinking about northern corn leaf blight, gray leaf spot, some of those other maybe more common diseases that we see in Iowa. But I think one thing that has helped us is we think about, again, just continuing to test our hybrids. We got more screening than we've ever had in the past in regards to performance of our hybrids against Southern Rust, but feel good about where our genetics stand and how we are, we're able to go through the market this past year.
And there's probably some peace of mind for a grower, isn't it, that, you're dealing with a disease you don't normally see, still stood up pretty well. What's it going to be like when it's those diseases that you're more familiar with? It's probably got some capability of dealing with those as well, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, again, at the end of the day, the big thing that we always focus on at Pioneer is really around our genetics and our industry-leading germplasm, and of course the agronomics that come with it. So we want to make sure that these products are as well, call it bulletproof as possible when they come out to the market. But at the end of the day, too, there are going to be a few products that maybe we're going to have to manage differently or think about. And so I think that's where it's important to have that relationship with that local Pioneer sales representative to really sit down, build out a plan for 26 to understand, hey, what trait packages do I need for this farm? Maybe, hey, what am I worried about from a disease pressure from what I saw this past year or years previously? To really build out the plan for 26 so that we're getting the best success that we can have possible.
And when you talk about building a plan, getting in touch with the Pioneer rep, how tailored to that farm is the plan from Pioneer? Is it down to the field level?
Yeah, I mean, we like our old terminology we used to say all the time was right product, right acre. And no kidding, our Pioneer sales representatives, there's no one better when it comes to being the local expert in that community to understand, hey, this farmer, the fields that they're planting, the fields that they've been farming maybe for years. So a lot of times these Pioneer reps have a lot of history of maybe previous products being on these farms. And so I think a lot of it's, understanding more of what's changed within that farmer's operation that we need to be mindful of. But then also, again, sitting down with that local Pioneer representative that can give some of that local tailored information to the grower to make sure we're positioning it well.
So Pioneer growers this year still happy with yield numbers even in a wild year like this?
Yes, yeah, and honestly too, I think the other thing they've been happy with is even our new trait technologies that we've talked about. So a lot of farmers in Iowa have been planting Chrome and AcreMax products. We continue to have some great products in those old traits, but we've got a lot of success that we're hearing from comments around PowerCore Enlist and Vorceed Enlist, especially Vorceed Enlist. I know like in Northeast Iowa, we saw way higher corn rootworm pressures again this year. Seeing a lot of value that our current DP 4114 trait along with RNAi is bringing from a rootworm protection. So had a lot of farmers that were really happy with the results that came there. So again, it's all about germplasm. It's still about agronomics. And of course, we got to have the right traits to partner with it as well.
And with Vorceed, not the full rollout quite yet, was it? It was more of a slow rollout?
Yeah. So we had some introductory volumes in 23, a little bit more in 24. And then I'd say like this last year in 25 was kind of, I call it the next step in that direction. So as we move forward into 26, 27, farmers are going to be able to see a lot of different Vorceed Enlist type products or PowerCore Enlist type products. And the nice thing about that too is we just highlighted the rootworm protection that we get with Vorceed Enlist. The other big benefit that we're going to give farmers is more herbicide flexibility. So these products can spray up to 4 different herbicide tolerances. So whether that's glyphosate, Liberty, Enlist, as well as FOP tolerance. So we know weeds aren't getting any easier to control either. So having options and tools in the toolbox is going to be important.
And that's one thing we know about farmers. They love to have that option to be able to do what they want to do.
You never know what a year's going to bring. So we want to make sure that our farmers are armed with options when those times come. So
Brandon Walter with Pioneer, my guest here today. Brandon, what's the best way for our Iowa viewers to get in touch and learn more about Pioneer corn?
Yeah, so first off, they can go visit Pioneer.com, or probably honestly the best place to go is go visit with your local Pioneer sales representative. to learn more about your products in your local area, as well as some of the exciting things that we'll have here in 26 to celebrate 100 years with Pioneer. There's going to be some local things that we're going to try to engage our farmers on. So stay tuned for those information as they come forward.
Brandon Walter, thanks so much for the time here today. Really appreciate it, and have a great rest of the convention.
Yeah, thanks again.
Thank you to Brandon Walter, the U.S. marketing lead for Pioneer Corn. That is going to wrap up segment number 2 of Weekend Ag Matters. Coming up next, it will be Riley Smith to wrap up the show. And a reminder, you can find all episodes of Weekend Ag Matters, including this episode of the show, under the podcast tab of our website at iowaagnet.com. Riley Smith with more on the way next. You're listening to Weekend Ag Matters on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, where Iowa Ag matters.
Start your trading day the right way with Market Matters, the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network's first look at the grain markets. Every morning, we bring you the numbers from the overnight session, plus a quick snapshot of the macroeconomy and what's driving market moves. Need to know what's coming next? Market Matters gives you a daily preview of market-moving news and reports so you're ready for the trading day ahead. And don't miss our daily livestock market outlook. Get the analyst predictions before the markets open. Get the edge you need. Tune into Market Matters every weekday morning, only on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network.
Welcome back to Weekend Ag Matters. Here's Riley Smith.
Thanks again for tuning in to Weekend Ag Matters on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Riley Smith. On Friday was the Practical Farmers of Iowa annual conference at the Iowa Events Center in Des Moines. Had the chance to visit with a few of the members around the organization. First off is Ann Kraus. She runs the Cover Crop Business Accelerator program for practical farmers. And if you could first off just kind of give us a refresher of how that program works and what it's designed for.
Yeah, hi. We've been up and running since 2020, so this will be our 6th year enrolling cover crop businesses. It's a year-long program, and what our intention is to get more people in the business of cover crops. So that might mean they're an application business, they're selling seed, they're growing seed, they're cleaning seed. We just want to make sure that the resources are out there for farmers to have those practices a part of their rotation.
And as part of the annual series of field events that we see through Practical Farmers of Iowa, from the people I visited, there's been several of them who are already in the program and talk about the benefits of that. And it's very interesting to see the people who are already involved within cover crops kind of expanding to, like you said, take on those practices, right?
Yeah, these guys that get involved in this, it really is a snowball effect. You know, they start maybe with their own drill on their own acres, and pretty soon their neighbors get involved. They really are good promoters of these practices because they can show on farm what's going on and get everybody around them involved too.
So in what we've seen so far from that program, what has I would say kind of the step through that accelerator been like, take on a few of these things. Now let's try adding this. Let's try adding this. How does that kind of go so far?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. It really is a snowball effect for people. And I've heard before, I almost kind of accidentally got into this because they really did just start on their farm. And then they started talking to people, and then they get interested. They start doing some acres for somebody else. And then they think, well, instead of buying the seed, maybe I can grow the seed myself. So we see a lot of people head down that path, and then maybe they buy a cleaner and they're cleaning it themselves. And really, they kind of take care of that whole process for people. Again, just to take that pressure off of the farmer. If the farmer can't handle the labor or don't have the equipment, there's probably somebody that they can hire to do that for them.
I think it's interesting, too. There's a whole myriad of programs that you hear about every year, and it's one thing for PFI to go around spreading the word about the program, but like you mentioned, it really does feel like the best word of mouth in this situation has been just from farmers talking to each other and building that network, right?
Yeah, I've been really impressed to see how these people can kind of change the landscape around them. I hear a lot of times, well, that's just not done in my area. Well, this is how that can change. You get a few people talking. People start wondering why cover crops year after year. It must be doing something. They must be getting something out of it if they're doing it year over year. So they started asking questions, and these guys are providing meetings and field days and opportunities to learn, which is also super valuable.
And I feel like that's just the more, I would say, effective method. It feels like people listen a lot more when it's their peers out there who are talking about, not that they don't listen when everybody else is, but when they have those peers out there and they can like see that and kind of get their hands on, it's even more effective to spread that. And, these practices that they are spreading are not only good for business, but good for the environment as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I tell people to try and become a partner, and there's a lot less risk for that farmer stepping into a new practice if they feel like there's a partnership there. And of course, these guys are in it to make money. They want their business to succeed, and that means that they want the farmer to succeed so that they come back year after year.
Right, Ann, thanks so much for taking the time to visit today. Before we wrap up here, what's the best way for people to get in touch about the Cover Crop Business Accelerator and potentially get involved?
Yeah, if you go to the PFI website under programs and cover crops, you'll find the Cover Crop Business Accelerator. We're really reaching out to people in Iowa, Nebraska, and Minnesota right now. So if you know somebody, or if you yourself are a cover crop business or want to become that, give us a shout, give us an application, and we'll be happy to talk you through the program.
All right, that again was Ann Kraus with the Practical Farmers of Iowa. A great conversation on the Cover Crop Business Accelerator. And Ann, thanks again for your time as always.
Thank you.
At the event, I also had a chance to visit with Tim Youngquist. He's a board member of the Practical Farmers of Iowa, and we discussed prairie strips and how that can be utilized on a farm to not only increase soil retention, but also promote healthy wildlife.
I'm a farmer in western Iowa, so in Sac County, and I've installed prairie strips on my own farm on our most environmentally sensitive and then our least productive acres. And also my off-farm job is with the agronomy department at Iowa State University, where my job is to move around the state helping farmers and landowners get connected with areas of their farms that they could put in prairie strips.
So with those prairie strips, how does that get implemented into a field, first off?
Yeah, so one of the neat things about prairie strips is how flexible it is. You can install it around the outside of the field. You can install it through the field. Really the flexibility is key, and you can target areas that are either lower producing. You can target areas where water is moving through either onto the field or off of the field. If you have an area, again, that's lower producing or something that's steep or just not as farmable. And not only can you put prairie strips out there, but through your local USDA service center, really anywhere in the country, you can go down there and say, hey, I'm interested in prairie strips. It's what's called CP43, and it's available as part of the CRP, or Conservation Preserve Program. So there's technical support and there's cost share available for farmers to put in prairie strips.
And of course, we know with those prairie strips, there's a lot of benefits for like water and nutrient runoff, keeping that in there, but it's also great for a bit of habitat as well, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So the two main focuses with prairie strips were holding soil in place and then filtering water as it leaves the property. So it depends on what your goals are and how you situate those strips, but really anywhere that you would put prairie, and again, this would be in your backyard, in your front yard, on an 80-acre field, wherever it would be, you will really quickly begin to see benefits to soil microbial community, but then a lot of neat above ground stuff where you'll have grassland birds, things like pheasants, songbirds, pollinators. With our research that we've started almost 20 years ago at Iowa State, we found that you double the abundance of birds and you triple the abundance of pollinators. So kind of a neat thing that you get from this conservation practices that you don't get from a lot of the other ones.
So when it comes to those prairie strips, I know that there's kind of a bit of a tactical way of having the distance from the field itself. I believe with certain pollinators, is it that you have to have a certain amount of distance between like farming practices and them if they're protected and they end up in that area?
Yeah, so one of the neat things, there's a lot of concern that you are putting things like monarchs out into areas where maybe there's insecticide being applied or they're going to be adverse conditions, that they're going to be somehow affected. And the neat thing at Iowa State is we're finding that the data just does not support that. So what a neat thing is that from a production standpoint, you can have your corn and soybeans, but then immediately next to that, you can have your prairie, this diverse mix of flowers and grasses that is actually increasing the production of something like monarchs or these other pollinators. So you don't really need a buffer space. You do need to be mindful, as you're applying insecticides or herbicides, try to watch the wind direction, follow the label on the herbicide. But for the most part, those species are affected by the application of herbicide and insecticide, but at very low non-lethal levels.
All right, Tim, lots of great information today. Is there anything else when it comes to kind of implementing prairie strips that you think producers should be kind of aware of today?
Yeah, absolutely. So prairie was the dominant ground cover here for thousands of years prior to farming. And I think, here at our farm, my wife can have cut flowers on our table from basically April to September. From a quality of life standpoint, going out, looking at the birds, things like that, my young kids looking at flowers, those kind of things. Not only is it good to keep soil in place and protect the water, but you get all these quality of life benefits on top of that make farming more enjoyable and make living in a rural area more enjoyable.
And Tim, if anyone wants to learn more online about prairie strips, how can they do that?
Yep. So you could just Google or use your whatever preferred search engine, search Prairie Strips Iowa State, or you can go to prairiestrips.org and you can find Iowa State information, or reach out to your local USDA service center, which would be in your county seat town, wherever you are located.
And that's it for this week's episode of Weekend Ag Matters. Thanks again for tuning in. You can listen to this episode and more by going to the iowaagnet.com. For Russ Parker, Mark Magnuson, and Dustin Huffman, I'm Riley Smith, wishing you a great rest of your weekend. Join us again next week for more Weekend Ag Matters.